Good morning, everyone. My name is Tammy Choquette, and I'm the Executive Assistant to the Dean here at the College of Engineering. Welcome and thank you for joining us today at the UAA College of Engineering Professional Development Seminar Series. Today is the last seminar of the semester, and I have the honor of introducing our guest speaker, Dr. Corby G. Anderson, who I have known for almost 30 years. Yes, it has been that long. It seems like only yesterday when I had the great pleasure of working with him at the beginning of my career in higher education at the Center for Advanced Mineral and Metallurgical Processing at Montana Tech, also known as CAMP. Corby was a director and I was his administrative assistant. We had some fun times, I learned a lot and developed a deep appreciation for higher education and engineering. Dr. Anderson is a licensed professional chemical engineer with more than 45 years of global experience spanning industrial operations, corporate leadership, research, consulting, and higher education. A native of Butte, Montana, he currently directs the Kroll Institute for Extractive Metallurgy and the Center for Resource Recovery and Recycling at the Colorado School of Mines. Dr. Anderson has advised over 45 graduate students, holds 19 international patents in multiple technologies, with several advancing to industrial practice and licensure. He is a fellow of both the Institution of Chemical Engineers and of the Institute of Materials, Minerals, and Mining. His contributions have been widely recognized, including multiple distinguished career awards and recent recognition among Stanford University's top 2% scientists worldwide. Dr. Anderson, welcome.
Well, thanks, Tammy. Funny to be doing this after 30 years, but always a pleasure. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I started working in antimony, my master's thesis in 1982 at Montana Tech. Didn't know that 44 years later I'd still be talking about it, and I think it's very interesting. I think I'll give you a background in the history of antimony as well as some of the technical aspects. And of course, Alaska has a lot of activity now in antimony because it is a critical material for the Department of War. So you've got a number of projects. Felix, I think, is one of them up there, and Nova Gold. They're trying to develop some antimony operations, and you'll see some of the applications for that. So hopefully this all works. Let's see, come on, why are we not? There we go. Okay, so I am with the Colorado School of Mines. I joined after I worked at CAMP, along with Tammy. I joined in 2009. I was recruited to CAMP by my master's advisor, and then I was recruited to Colorado School of Mines by my PhD advisor. So I guess I had good relations with them. You'll see some of the accolades there. My son also did his PhD, Kalen, at the Colorado School of Mines. And so I like, as a parent, the last one, average starting salary, bachelor's mines graduate is 10K more than an Ivy League graduate. Indeed, he's doing well. He's in the lead recycling business in Minnesota and prospering. So it's good. And you'll see that we also host within Golden the Coors Brewery. The brewery came about in 1873, I believe, and Colorado School of Mines 1874. So there you go. So this is a little bit about what we do. I direct the Kroll Institute for Extractive Metallurgy, which has been around for now 51 years. It was started by Dr. William J. Kroll, who invented and created the technologies for zirconium and titanium that created those industries. And of course, zirconium is used in shielding for nuclear reactors. So that was a very important application, particularly for the U.S. Navy, right? But within the Kroll Institute now, we work with private entities. You'll see some of them listed over here, and it's kind of endless. But then we have our Center for Resource Recovery and Recycling. That's 3 universities. It's us, Worcester Polytechnic, and KU Leuven in Belgium. And then we are founding members of the DOE Critical Materials Innovation Hub. We're now in our heading into our 14th year. And then we have a Center for Mining Sustainability where we work with a number of South American entities on research. I have a PhD student from Kazakhstan in that. Let's see if I get this clicker to work. No, I'll have to do it manually. So a little bit about us. Just so you know a little bit of your speaker, she didn't note this, but I went to school at the McKinley School in Butte, and somebody sent me this picture. They found it. I was the second grade declamation champ. You'll notice the nice, embarrassing suit my mother put me in. Maybe that's what propelled me over the top. So I did exhibit speaking skills early, apparently. Um, so a lot of people say, well, what is antimony? And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll have an understanding. But antimony, primary use, you're probably in a room with antimony and you don't know it. Antimony is used as a flame retardant. Typically, antimony oxides are mixed with halides like bromine, and you put them in fabric or in your plastic in your laptop. Indeed, there will be antimony, and it's a flame retardant that keeps you or whatever objects from burning up, right? But it also has another side to it that I think is very fascinating. Surprisingly, it was one of the earliest and most well-studied elements, but from a different standpoint than we do now. But you can see here's some antimony trioxide, here's antimony metal, or we call it Regulus. And of course, here is a picture from a manuscript on antimony that was published. And here is the symbol of antimony, which we'll talk about. So, like I said, I started working on antimony in 1982 when I was at Montana Tech. I was doing a project on recycling some smelting waste, and among other things, had antimony. And then years later, 1988, after I finished my PhD, and I swore I'm done with academics. You'll never see me back on a college campus. That lasted for 9 years, but then I came back. But anyway, I went to work for Sunshine Mining Company, and they had a antimony plant. So I had to learn all about that. And part of that was learning about this individual, Zhao Tian Kong, very fascinating fellow. He wrote this book. He started the antimony business in China, and I had the honor and pleasure in 2019 to going to Central South University, where he started their metallurgy programs. They gave a nice presentation about him when I was there. And I think this may be the best metallurgy book I own. It's interesting, when I got this over 30 years ago, the Chinese, we got it from mainland China in English, and instead of paying them, they wanted us to exchange books. It was kind of interesting. That was more valuable to them. So anyway, so antimony has a long history, and basically the name comes from a Greek word, anti and monos, which means not alone. And indeed, you'll see that antimony, while it's critical and rare, and we'll talk about that, is everywhere. It loves to be with other elements in the form of many, many minerals, right? So because of that, antimony in alchemy symbolizes our wild nature and animal tendencies. It's known as lupus metallorum, and also referred to as the gray wolf, because molten antimony so aggressively gobbled up base metals such as copper, lead, and tin to form alloys. So lupus metallorum. And the alchemy history of antimony is quite fascinating, and maybe after you see this presentation, it'll make you look at the sky a little differently. Antimony is not a metal. It's classified as a metalloid in that it exhibits poor conductivity to electricity and heat. And the alchemists back in the day, who approached science much differently than we do, but sometimes just as effective, they were fascinated by antimony metal to form crystalline stars when cast, right? And so for them, that symbolized the quintessence of matter, and they denoted that as the philosopher's signet star. So again, antimony symbolizes our wild nature and animal power. And here's the symbol for antimony, the alchemy symbol. And interesting enough, one of my PhD students a couple of years ago, who works with my son now, I don't do tattoos, but he showed me that for whatever reason, he has an antimony symbol as a tattoo, which endeared him to me, although I don't do tattoos. But anyway, that's all right. So if you look in the sky in the constellation Leo, you can see the Regulus. It's the bright star seen in constellation. It represents the heart of the lion. It's the brightest star in the constellation, among the brightest in Earth's eye. So this is what the ancients deemed the starring effect on antimony was. It was the philosopher's signet star. So they felt that among all elements that they knew of back in the day, antimony was the most fascinating. So here you can see the starring of the antimony here. And if you go back and check the literature, there are any number of patents that have been filed for starring mixtures to make antimony metal appear with this, what would you call it, star Regulus texture, right? And that meant the quality was high. The name Regulus means little king, and it received its name from Copernicus. So it's been regarded as one of the leading stars in the sky for 2,000 years. Antimony was isolated in 1540, and then sometime after, a monk named Basilius Valentinus wrote a monograph devoted to antimony. And I don't do German or Middle German very well, but it translates to the Triumphant Chariot of Antimony, hence the title of this presentation in part. It's regarded as the first monograph devoted to the chemistry of single metal, and you can find it online, believe it or not, as a PDF, and I've done that. So I've taken some images. Here we are, and here is the monk right there. But you can see some of these. Here's the cover of it. You can see some of the images that they put in it. So among all other elements known at the time, this one stood out. But in our society, antimony in the last 15 years has risen to the level of being critical, if not strategic, right? So, the difference is critical materials are something you want, and strategic are the ones you need, right? Which is why things that the military want are strategic. Antimony is one of those, right? So I should update this. The 2011 risk list, antimony is ranked the highest category. And you don't have to look around in Alaska too much to know that's even the case now with everybody kicking up antimony rocks, right? So here is a British Geological Survey 2012, and you see antimony's right up there, leading producer China, top reserves China, right? And that's who dominates in many, many things, including antimony, right? Here you can see a chart of, economic importance versus supply risk, and right up here, this is from a few years back, but there below the rare earths is antimony, right? So a lot of people are studying antimony again. The problem is the Chinese have dominated the markets for 30 to 40 years, and so they control resources, and they also control the processing and refining. People call me because I do understand processing and refining, but I'm just one of the few English people who do. So here you can see some sources of antimony. But here's this big red blob here, and that would be China. And then we've got our friends in Russia and Tajikistan. So the main potential suppliers are not exactly our best trading partners. Tajikistan might be, but the other ones are not. So we got an issue. And a number of things went on in China over the years. I mean, when I was at Sunshine, we competed with the Chinese, selling our antimony metal or products, and we gradually saw the Western markets disappear because the Chinese play the game a little different than we do. They want market share. They will undercut things. They are big on snapping up supply, potential supply and resources, sitting on them, or creating and investing in technologies, which obviously we haven't done in a while, right? So, and also what the Chinese did was they consolidated 20, 25 years ago, they consolidated their production, and that is, and I'll show you a picture. There used to be a indigenous type of antimony mining and processing. And under the auspices of environmental controls, the Chinese cracked down on that and consolidated things. Now, I had a friend and colleague who used to be in the antimony business. Well, I guess he still is, but anyway, he used to trade directly with the Chinese. And the Chinese used to put a lot of tariffs on things. And so the producers over there would cast them into various objects like shoes, if you can believe that, to, to avoid the tariffs. So he said they would get a shipment of antimony in the shape of shoes, which you couldn't wear, but it avoided tariffs. But anyway, it's an interesting business from their side. Yeah. Um, Here you go. This has happened in 2011. Government wouldn't prove any projects for antimony and then shut down a lot of these smelters. So you saw a surge about 15 years ago in antimony prices, but nothing like now. And we'll see some other headlines coming up here, right? Here's a whole bunch of them. Qualified exporters, kind of like the rare earths market. Here, Kyrgyzstan had a smelter, but they have stopped because of a lack of feedstock and so on. And then the Russians came on about 10 years ago, and Polius, which is a gold producer, ran into a part of their ore body that had a lot of antimony. And so they said they expect to become 20% of the world's primary antimony production. I've been up to that area. I did some work. Surprising, I've been to Siberia, but I haven't been to Alaska. But anyway, the issue with that is the Russian government does not like gold being exported out of the country, so their supply chain is a little difficult. But they are developing. Here, Roskill, which is a business information source, they believed back in the day that the secondary supply will surpass the lead acid battery demand, but they said little or no primary will be required for metallurgical, but that's obviously not happening. So here is a project I'm aware of. I did a little work on it in Oman. There was an investment for a new antimony smelter, 245 million. It didn't work. They had to rebuild it and redo it. Now it works, but it's sitting there because it's so huge. It needs a large supply of antimony to feed it. And one of the problems we have is finding a supply of antimony. So if you want to buy a big antimony plant in Oman, it's there. The government's not going to do anything with it, but anyway. And here you go. Here is Police and what they want to do or did want to do with antimony. And then back in the day, there was a thing called the Fania Metal Exchange where they were warehousing minor metals, kind of like the LME, London Metal Exchange. It fell apart, obviously, because there's so much lack of transparency and manipulation in minor metals, or now they're critical. So the Chinese went in and snapped up what was in the warehouse and changed the market. So a lot of things going on. And then here's the big one. In September of 2025, and also later in December 24, excuse me, the Chinese cut off basically all supplies of antimony to the Western world. And that shifted things dramatically. And essentially, that is still going on. And so people like the Department of War, which will show you some of the applications, are scrambling. I mean, we've got these conflicts going on around the globe, and antimony is indispensable for hardening lead for munitions, among other things. So you're seeing investments in Alaska, like at Nova Nova Gold. They got $40 million from Department of War, some other ones. So the U.S. Department has deemed it essential. Um, this is an interesting one. This is a projection. And what people believe is that the Chinese, while they have a lock on antimony supply, the antimony is very weird geologically. It occurs everywhere, but it's difficult to find it in high grade, large quantities. Okay. So there's a few areas in the world exist. One of them is in South Central China, um, and Zhongshan, where Zhao Tiancong started the antimony business in China. But that was over 100 years ago. And, in any deposit or ore body, eventually you deplete it. And the word on the street from credible people is that the resources and reserves at Zhongshan have been depleted, which means, the Chinese are probably, if they do mine anything, they're keeping it internal as well, right? So that changes the game even further. Here you can see, there you go. Um, I did this talk a few years ago, 11 years of consumption left, but even it's a very scarce mineral. It exists, antimony exists everywhere, but finding high grade, large deposits difficult. I mean, you're seeing in the lower United States, you're seeing in Idaho, you're seeing Perpetua Resources trying to develop an antimony play. Of course, it's a lot of gold, but not too many places. You've got South Africa. There's some Australian entities that have good deposits, Hillgrove, Costerfield area. So difficult supply chain. Bolivia has been in the past a big producer, and they're starting to come back. The Chinese in the 80s and 90s drove the Bolivians and the South Africans out of business by undercutting the market. There's a mine in South Africa that is for sale. Somebody sent me an email the other day. I don't want to buy it. But some of these things. And then Tajikistan has some operations. Actually, one of them is controlled by an entity in New Jersey, but the Chinese have a lot of investment in there too. So you can see that very limited in major production. Australia is in the game as well. So again, antimony was known as far back as 4000 BC. It means not found alone. The metal is very brittle, and it came into real use in the 1900s for munitions. Obviously, World War I and World War II accentuated that. And then, of course, automobile batteries, lead acid batteries, they contain antimony in order to keep the lead properties rigid. So my son indirectly is in the antimony business. And then the mandated use of flame retardants really drove the use of antimony. In the Western world, you're required to use antimony oxide and halides in order to fireproof things like children's pajamas or fabrics, plastics, airplanes, right? But there's other uses. We'll go through some of them. Another one is with the photovoltaics coming online for renewable energies. The fining of the glass is done with sodium antimonate. So there's a big surge in that use. So here we go. Here's different uses again: sodium antimonate, ammonium lead, stibnite, brake liners, and matches also used in munitions and things like this, right? So here's Regulus, antimony metal. And you'll see that it's normally cast in these ingots. And of course, when you have your lead acid battery and you use it and recycle it, the lead and the antimony are recycled to whatever degree they can be, right? Here is antimony trioxide and some historical pictures. SB203, used for, again, if you have your laptop, your case is going to contain antimony trioxide. This is a picture of me in graduate school, and this is my son This was about 1980. This is about 40 years old, Tammy. And now he's in the lead acid battery, but he's got his flame-proof pajamas. I don't think the dog did. And of course, these are my two grandchildren here, so they're protected as well. So, anyway. Um, and then if you drink bottled water, um, there's a certain amount of antimony that is used as a catalyst for the polycondensation of the polyester, right? So it improves the condensation time, significantly reduces impurity levels in the resin. So you didn't know that. So the next time you pick up a bottle of water, in part, antimony helped create that bottle. And then there's other things like potentially for phase change computer memory. Um, um, could be a big boost to the antimony market. The Navy has looked into novel solar cells with higher efficiency conversions, right? So anyway, so abundance. The abundance in the earth is about 0.2%. You can see it right here. So it's not rare, it's just hard to find it at a high enough quantity and quality to do something with it, right? And like I said, the name says not alone. And indeed, I'll show you there's 100 antimony minerals that are known, right? But stibnite is the predominant one that people treat, right? So here's a list I put together for a publication. You can see all the different kind of minerals. And indeed, it is the wolf metal because it likes to gobble everything else up. But here's our friend stibnite, which is common. And then, of course, when I was at Sunshine, we treated tetrahedrite because it contained copper and contained silver, right? But many, many minerals. But the fibergite is the other one we treated at Sunshine with the silver. But the main mineral of interest is stibnite. And here is a picture of global antimony deposits, at least of that are relevant. So you can see, like I said, we've got down in South America, in Bolivia. You've got some in South Africa. You've got these over in Russia. Of course, here's the big dogs over here in China, and then a few down in Australia. We should be in Idaho. There is the Yellow Pine District where Perpetua is now, as well as the Coeur d'Alene District where I worked. And then, of course, since we're talking about Alaska, Alaska has been a long-term on and off supplier of antimony, mostly during war years, and we may see that again, right? So it has interesting characteristics. One of them is that molten antimony, upon solidification, expands. Most metals, when you solidify them, they shrink. And like I said, um, it's really what we call a metalloid, right? It's not very malleable, and it's a very poor conductor of electricity and heat. So it's on the edge of being a metal. Um, Here's the definition of a metal, right? Something that's hard, opaque, good electrical, thermal conductivity. Um, Antimony doesn't really have that, right? Here's a definition of metalloids. They behave as nonmetals when they react with metals. They're amphoteric oxides, and so they have different. So this basically, and here is the sequence of what, if you boil down on the periodic chart, what metalloids would be. Okay, some of these are more critical nowadays. Germanium, people going crazy for it. So how do we create antimony? And this is what's missing in the Western world right now, not only the supply, but the know-how, because the Chinese have taken that over. And so even if you open up an antimony mine and create a concentrate, the only place really to go anymore, maybe until some of these other places develop something, is China. So they control things that way, which is, I'll give them credit, they're smart. So here is a picture. This is from Zhao Tiankong's book. And I like to joke, but that was taken on a sunny day. And I don't know if anybody's been to China. They do have a problem with smog there. Let's just say that, depending on where you are. But this was the Zhiquanshan antimony complex back in the day. And again, Zhao Tiancong helped start all of that. Very remarkable fellow. And there he is, right? So maybe in the Western world, I'm Zhao Tiancong, but I'm not as smart or as accomplished as he was, but maybe someday. Okay, so mineral processing of antimony. You'll see right here in China, they use technologies like what you do, heavy media separation, flotation, but also this hand sorting part. And China being a communist system, they don't they don't like idle hands, right? I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who was in the antimony business, he was working. They were buying antimony materials on the East Coast of the United States, and they would get the antimony metal in these handmade, I guess you would call them crates, and they were actually lashed together out of trees and tree branches. And of course, New Jersey now is highly regulated for waste, including those. So they had a problem with what do we do with this stuff? So they went to the Chinese and said, listen, we will buy you pallets. They showed them what they were and ship them over. And you can put the metal on them and then we'll give them back to you. And we don't have to deal with all these branches. And back then the Chinese said, we'll get back to you. And it took them a while and they came back and they said, we'll do it, but you have to fix one other problem. And they said, what is that? They said, what do we do with the people that make the boxes out of the branches? Because they want everybody to be working. So I don't know if they just paid them not to do it or what, but that's kind of I mean, if you've been to China, I don't know if any of you have, because I can't really see any. I've been there 3 times. They don't really have indigent people walking the streets. It's interesting. If you are that way, they pick you up and I think they take you to a farm and put you to work. I don't know. So, there isn't a lot of people in tents hanging out on the street. Very interesting way to do it. I don't know about civil rights, but they do it. So here's a flow sheet, and you can see all of the mineral processing unit operations, the flotation, but here right in there you see the hand sorting. And indeed, the Chinese, again, before they cracked down, there used to be the little independent miners, and they would go around with a knapsack and they would pick up stibnite in that region and sometimes even smelt it themselves, which created a lot of issues for the for the Chinese government trying to control it, much less the pollution. They cracked down. But yeah, the labor part of this, very present. So pyrometallurgy is a technology where we use high temperatures to create metals and alloys, right? So generally, depending upon the grade and quality of the antimony, we can do what we call volatilization to make in air to make antimony trioxide. We can smelt to make metal, or if you have a very high grade antimony concentrate, you can go through a process called liquation or iron precipitation. In the United States right now, Department of War is funding a company called U.S. Antimony down in Thompson Falls, and they're using liquation to make some antimony trisulfide for the military for munitions uses. It's not easy to do. You have to have high quality, but we're expending bullets these days, right? So anyway, so here's a picture. Here's a picture. This is from Changsha, where I was. Huacheng Mining and Smelting. Here's a gentleman, and he's got his own little furnace here. He doesn't have a lot of personal protection, and I guess he's just feeding it. So this is how it was back in the day, right? And here is the innovation that drove the antimony business that was adopted by the Chinese. A gentleman named C.Y. Wang, as well as Zhao Tiancong, was the Herrenschmidt furnace. And I think the Herrenschmidt furnaces came from, I think they were either German or French. I can't remember. There was some designs and patents, and the Chinese acquired them to create their business. So basically, here's some other guys here. Again, no PPE. Not sure what year this was, but If you've been to China, it hasn't changed too much when it comes to safety practices, right? And this is the dust bins, and here's a gentleman down here with a shovel. So he's working away. The Chinese are, what would the term be? Very industrious, but if you visit any of their facilities, the kind of things they do there, we would not be allowed to do in North America, which is why they're able to get away with a lot of stuff and create dominance again in some of these markets. To make antimony trioxide, we take stibnite or metal and we heat it up in a furnace, maybe 700 degrees C with air oxygen. And the antimony trioxide is volatile, so it will become a gas, and then we cool it, and we can make antimony trioxide particles that are basically used for flame retardants. So there you go. Here's a picture of it with here and some cooling chambers. Then you've got a bag house down here. Boom. There's your product that'll go into your laptop and keep it from burning. And here's some nice stuff. This is from China. And here it's got the antimony trioxide content, and this is the opacity. So actually the whiteness and the particle size are very important in the product quality of the antimony trioxide. A friend of mine, again, who was in the business, said, you know, if you really want white antimony trioxide, you want to leave a little arsenic in it. So don't be eating your antimony trioxide from your laptop. Then you can take the antimony trioxide, and just like we do in the iron and steel business, we have the reduction with carbon monoxide, so we can form the metal. Of course, this is your, in my business, we call this the boudoir reaction of carbon dioxide with carbon to form CO. And then here's that, I was telling you about, if you have a high-grade stibnite concentrate, you can get selective melting of the Sb2S3 away from the wastes. So this is how, like US antimony, in a neutral environment, they're actually making antimony trisulfide for Department of War. And then another one is you can take the stibnite and react it with elemental iron, and that will reduce to elemental metal, and of course, a waste product of iron sulfide. So not commonly used, but it's possible. And so here is this was a smelter flow sheet. I think it was in Bolivia. And it's a little busy, but you can see all the things that were going on. The smelter got nationalized by the government, 20 years ago. There was a couple of legal proceedings over it, but it's still sitting idle, from what I understand. The hydrometallurgy of antimony. I've worked in this field quite a bit. Hydrometallurgy is a newer form of treatment, really came about in 1887, where pyrometallurgy has been used by people before Christ was born, right? And hydrometallurgy is viewed as more environmentally acceptable for a number of reasons. But the key, I teach hydrometallurgy, I teach pyrometallurgy too. It tends to have better separations, right? So that's why also people like it. There's two systems, a chloride system and a sulfide system. The chloride system has been used, but not effectively. It was used in Canada and used in Australia, but it failed for a number of reasons. So here's your reaction. There you go. And you basically have a reaction, either ferric chloride, hydrochloric acid. But the killer is, if you use hydrochloric, you can form H2S, which is not anything you want to be around. Hydrogen cyanide is less toxic if you want to believe that. But anyway, and the selectivity wasn't there, so those plants didn't work. I did do some consulting on that one, but it was a disaster. So here is where I worked at Sunshine from 1988 till 1995. we used alkaline sulfide hydrometallurgy. And it's an interesting story. There were other plants, Kyrgyzstan, China, Australia, but the Sunshine plant was started in 1942. And it was, critical minerals and materials is all the rage now. But with the advent of World War II and our entry into it, the US government was also worried about critical materials and minerals. And again, antimony was very important, again, just for munitions or otherwise. So the Sunshine plant where I worked was in part built by support from the US government. The original plant was they tore down a bridge in the state of Washington and shipped the steel over to Idaho in order to put it together, which I thought was interesting. And then it operated successfully. There was a gentleman named Church Holmes who worked at Bunker Hill, and he had the original patents and came up with. So very interesting. Unfortunately, it's gone. It was torn down in 2002. Wish we had it now. And there you go. And I spent 8 years working at Sunshine Mining Company. That was when silver was $4 a troy ounce. I shudder to see $70 a troy ounce these days. I might get my old safety coins and sell them. I got a whole bunch of them. Um, Here's the antimony plant at Sunshine on a nice sunny day. So a big building here. I spent a lot of time there. This building was built in 1972. The original was by the mine in 1942, but then there was a Sunshine fire, so they moved the plant downstream to get it away from the mine in case that happened. But here's a picture inside, and here's some antimony metal being reaped from the hydrometallurgical process. And here's the flow sheet that we came up with. We actually got a patent on this, which is expired, but did a lot of work on antimony, didn't know it to be so critical. And here's some of the products we made. Here's a nice cathode. You see the bubbling here from the competing reactions of cathode. And then here is our sodium antimonate. And if you recall, I said this is used for fining of glass. So if we want solar cells, which my wife and I just put some on our house in Butte, we get to watch our electric bill drop, I guess. This is used for fining the glass. So this could be a growth market for antimony. Of course, where do we get our solar cells? We get them from China, but that's a separate story. And then I think maybe when Tammy was at Montana Tech or shortly after she left, well, you left in 2002 or three, I think.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. We started doing some work. You remember Darby Stacy?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, he was a grad student there. He's now the CEO of a Talon Minerals up in northern Michigan. So he succeeded in spite of me, but that's good. Good for him. Anyway, we started looking, and Carl Pramono was an Indonesian student. So those were, I was a research professor at Montana. Those were my first graduate students, I guess you would say, and they were both very good. Now I got so many of them, and I don't know what to do with them except just watch them succeed. But anyway, in Montana back then, there was a limitations on the use of cyanide. It was hotly debated. So we did some work as an alternative and found that this alkaline sulfide system actually would leach gold. So, and it wasn't cyanide. So interesting. So here's a flow sheet we came up with. And of course, here you can see some of the gold. Yeah. Anyway, fun stuff. Might be relevant these days because gold prices are high and are animal. Anyway, antimony purity. I'll kind of go through this. The analysis of antimony is not straightforward. And then a lot of the criteria, because it's been such a small market, are either propagated by the Chinese or traders. So there's limited things like ASTM standards. But again, going back in time, the way you determine the purity of antimony was the starring, right? So if you had a nice starring of the antimony, like star Regulus, then the traders deem that as high purity. So there you go. And of course, one of the first Chinese companies that was in the business called Twinkling Star Antimony, right? That gave due deference to this starring effect, right? So here is different products. Reduction smelting, 96, 97. Precipitation smelting using iron. And then here's purity of, what am I need ChatGPT to clean this up. But anyway, 98, 95. Actually, at Sunshine, we made antimony metal that was 99.5% pure. It was good stuff. Although we only got 50 cents a pound, not $10 a pound, but this is a different day and age. And then here is the Chinese national standards for antimony metal purity. And here's your grade 3, grade 4, and of course, key impurities. Arsenic is 1 for sure, right? So I think these standards still apply, but given the lack of supply, I think people are willing to take what they can get these days. And then antimony trioxide, obviously, a key aspect is what is the size? Because again, that opacity is very important. If you want to put antimony trioxide with a halide into plastics, you want pretty good coverage and not use as much material. And here goes my phone again. So sorry about that. Hold on. Sorry about that. All right. So anyway, I like to throw this one in. This is the metallurgical philosophy, which, if you know anything about the metallurgy business, we're the cash register and we are the capital intensive part. So we're the bane of the financial institutions that have to support us, but appreciate the opportunity to present. If you have questions, these two guys will take care of it. They're ready for action. That's my grandchildren. I did forward a copy of the presentation to Tammy, and I would be happy if you stayed awake at all to entertain any questions. So I'll stop my share. There we go. And happy to engage my Alaska colleagues, anything of interest. So thank you.
And we can start with some questions here in the room. And once the live stream catches up, we can take some questions from the live stream as well.
Okay,
So
sure.
open it up to the room. Okay.
First question, appreciate your presentation, is really good. How do you get the arsenic as far as mixing of the process? You said it's critical in some of the making of the antimony. How do you introduce that, or where does it get introduced?
Well, that was from a friend and colleague of mine. They used to make antimony trioxide and sell it. Now that company is gone, like many of them. But he was telling me that the whiteness of the antimony trioxide could be enhanced by leaving a little bit of the arsenic in it, not much, and that just brought out the whiteness. So, I mean, you're not talking about 10%, but hundreds of ppms or so just gave it a more appealing color, right? So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, have you seen any of those tailings or acid mine drainage having those antimonies ending up there? And is there any extractive, metallurgical process that can be used
for tailings?
Yeah, for tailings.
Well, there are a couple of companies up in Alaska that are. U.S. Antimony is messing around with an old antimony property and taking some things, and I think Felix might be doing that as well. I'm not sure. So yeah, I mean, if with prices the way they are now, and grade being grade is usually expressed in terms of or if you're going to determine something as ore in terms of its economics, certainly there would be more, what would they call it, motivation to treat the antimony. So yeah, then there's ways to do it. Unfortunately, in the Western world, we don't have a lot of that expertise. Now, I do. I don't have as much as my Chinese colleagues, but I do. So my phone is ringing all the time with people with antimony. But I think you're going to see some developments, maybe in Alaska. You know, the Felix people and the Nova people are talking about building some facilities. There's talk about doing some things in, what do you call it? The lower 48? I'm starting to talk like an
Yeah.
Alaska.
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
Yep.
All right. So there you go. All right. So yeah, I mean, there could be a propensity for that. It's a good question. Yeah.
So do you think the biomining process can work? Like when, like we are talking about this cost-effective, extraction process.
Mm-hmm. Potentially. Biomining is just another tool in the box, right? And you've got living organisms, as you're aware, that can either oxidize or reduce things, right? That's what they do. They have their advantages, but one of the challenges is they require care and maintenance, or they either go on strike or they die. See,
Right.
and I've seen that happen. So, but I think you're seeing applications in biology and mining, at least the understanding of it increase. It's used in the copper industry. You see that the old Johnson Cap mine down in Arizona, Rio Tinto has invested into that with their new Newton technology, which they won't tell you about it, but I believe it's bacterially motivated. And of course, in the gold industry, we've got several applications of treating gold concentrates, like in Ghana, places like that. So people have studied and better understood the application of biology to mining, and I think there's some things that could be applied or could be done. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Active crowd. That's good.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Hi. It sounds like antimony piggybacks other mineral development.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Big time.
So in Alaska, it's not like someone's gonna go for antimony project.
No.
They're gonna do it because of other potential for future development.
Well, the two that I'm aware of are Nova Gold, and I think the other one is Felix Gold. And then down in the lower 48, you've got Perpetua, which those are all gold plays that happen to have antimony, right? Yeah. So that's very true, sir.
So processing is not gonna be unique to Alaska. It's gonna be down below, and they have the capability now, or is it gonna also have to be developed?
Well, we currently in Canada and the United States have limited, if any, capability for treating antimony materials, right? U.S. Antimony has a primary smelter in the middle of Mexico, and then in Thompson Falls they have some refining capabilities, but it's not very much, right? Although, like I said, people are trying to develop these things right now, right?
But we'd be shipping out of Alaska.
Yeah. Well, if you read the press from Nova, they allege that they are going to build a facility, but they want to make antimony trisulfide, right? The Department of War gave them $40 million. So, and I think Felix, that's an Australian, well, they all are, but I think they got some money too. They want to make antimony metal, right? So, yeah.
Which process is desired for consumption for that? I understand, well, I don't really, but I understand what you're saying, the Department of Defense wants. Sorry,
Yep.
I'm not gonna political, I'm not gonna call it war. But anyway,
Whatever it
I'm
is.
not doing that. I'm not doing that.
Okay.
So what are all the way you process it desired, or is there one single process that fits everybody's desire for getting?
Ooh. Okay, I'll answer that two ways. The predominant method for creating antimony products is using pyrometallurgy. Okay, right, wrong, or different. Now, what is the best way to do it? You need to understand the nature of the material you want to treat and how it responds to a given technology, and then go down that path, right? So that would be my sneaky answer to you, right? But the established methodologies, which are predominantly in China, are pyrometallurgy, right? So,
And are there any health impact, besides the processing, of course, but when we see it all around us, is there any health concerns being brought up?
health issues?
Yeah, like next to your laptop or wearing a fire cover,
Oh,
whatever, is there anything coming up that's gonna say you can't do
well,
that anymore?
okay. Yeah, much like,
Especially when you mentioned it's in the water bottle. I'm like, oh.
yeah, yeah. Well, okay, like anything, there are different schools of thought when it comes to health and safety and environmental effects. Um, Antimony, there are some schools of thought that allege that it has carcinogenic properties. There are other people who say, well, it's not the antimony, it's the impurities in it, like lead and arsenic, that cause that. There is in Brussels, Belgium, there is an International Antimony Association, and you can go on their website. They've published a lot about health and environmental issues with antimony, and you can form your own opinion. My son, I'll tell you a story, and Tammy knows my son. Now he's a 40-year-old man, Tammy, but anyway, my son, after he got his PhD at Colorado, he went to work in the gold business, and then he moved some 5 years ago into the lead acid battery recycling business, which actually is a high-tech business, although it doesn't sound like it. And lead is a four-letter word in so many ways. And so part of his issue, because he's moved up the food chain in the lead company, is not only the technology and production aspects, but the relationship with the neighbors around the plant, because it was built in 1945, and here we are in 2026, and the area in Eagan, Minnesota has grown, right? And so the press will come out and say things like lead at any level is unsafe. Well, is that true? Probably not. What is the level that's safe? Well, that's to be determined. So the same thing is with antimony. You can go read things that say, oops, bad stuff. You can go read things, say good stuff. My experience has been positive. I mean, we didn't have anybody when I was at Sunshine who was, that I know of, hurt by being around antimony. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not an industrial hygienist, so I guess I'm not qualified. So, yeah.
Thank you, that's good. Don't worry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So besides availability, there's gonna be enough to do whatever we wanna do. It's just the cost, or is it gonna, like you mentioned, nuclear power plants, is it gonna become a problem in the next 10 or 20 years not to have enough unless you're paying for it? Or is it just not be available?
It's a big problem now. It's a big problem right now. And that's because it's a twofold problem. It is that, we don't have the processing and refining know-how or experience to, even if we find a deposit these days, to create the value out of it. But the other part of it is like the Chinese, who have relied upon the deposits in South Central China, Zhejiang, those are 100 years old. And they don't put a lot, it's not like the USGS. You can go on the internet and go read, oh, what's the resource in China? They don't do that. But people who were in the know that I talked to, and I talked to a number of people, Department of Commerce, Department of Defense, they seem convinced that the Chinese supply is diminishing, and they were the major producers, and they kicked everybody out of the business. So it's a twofold thing. You got to bootstrap finding or reopening deposits, and then creating the technologies to create the what you want, right? So
Be a lag with all that investment and time to build, to
yeah.
extract.
So yeah, I don't think we're gonna get out of this situation or a number of these other critical minerals for quite a while. I mean, the U.S. government is now and has been making some proactive methods or steps, but you've got agencies running around like a drunken sailor throwing millions of dollars at things. Um, I and some colleagues from Colorado School of Mines were just recently recruited by the RAND Corporation, which I didn't really know what it was, but they're a think tank for the government, and they advise people like Department of War, Department of Defense, whatever you call it. And so the idea was to get maybe some people who knew something about the business to at least objectively give them some advice before they made a decision. So, I guess I can say, President Trump has his vault. You've seen the vault thing, right? Where we're going to store all these critical metals and materials and right. It's a lot of money. I guess it's not top secret that the RAND Corporation is taking a look at that, and we're going to give some advice to the government entities about, what to do. Although I guess I'm naive. When I was recruited to do that, I said, well, I'd love to see the tax dollars of the, taxpayers spent well. And the gentleman who was with Rand, he said, well, sometimes we can do that, but then the senators get in the way. So I said, oh, okay, because they want to feather their own nest, right? So I don't know. It's interesting times, right?
So
And we're gonna wrap this up here.
one more question. So are there other minerals that are highly desirable that are easier to find, develop that antimony will piggybacking? In other words, instead of looking for antimony, look for these other minerals in the country, Alaska, will drive antimony and solve that, or is it not?
Well, certainly you're seeing perpetual resources in Idaho. That's a gold mine with an antimony byproduct, right? So yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We can just, one more question, let's wrap it up if anybody else has, and I don't see anything online, so
Okay.
are we good?
I love the technical questions of people that understand this. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Well, this is definitely, well, all critical minerals, and I mean, it's definitely an area to watch and
Oh
to,
God, yeah.
see what happens over the next couple of years. And I know, Deb, you might know more, but I know that Alaska, is very interested in critical minerals and rare earth, and there's some.
I'm working on the rare earths.
Yeah. So anyway, so thank you for coming, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Anderson.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
for
Good to
helping,
catch up, and yeah, I'd love to
yeah.
get up to Alaska, and if I will let you all know. So
Definitely. I do have the PowerPoint presentation like he said, so if you want me to send it to you, I can do that. If you are interested in the password for the PDH credit, it is Chariot, all lowercase, Chariot. And as I
Can you spell
mentioned,
that, please?
Chariot.
Just made sure it wasn't French.
Yep, yeah. And just a reminder that this is our last professional development seminar for this semester, but we do have our capstone poster competition coming up on Friday, April 24th in the second floor solarium. So we have all of our disciplines, the senior capstones, they will be presenting their posters, and you will be able to vote for your favorite in the People's Choice Awards. So
What's the date on that again?
It's going to be April 24th
Thank you.
from 11:30 to 1. Yeah. 11:30 to 1 in the second floor solarium. It's always a fun time. So we hope that you can help, that you can come for that. And then we're always looking for speakers for the next semester. So if you are interested in speaking, or you have someone that you think might be interested, then please let me know. And other than that, have a great weekend, and thank you again, Corby. And
all right.
We'll talk to you
Everybody
soon.
be well.
All right.
Thank you.
You.
Take care.
Yep. Bye now. Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
So when we're panning for gold, is there a test for antimony